For decades, the biggest ships on Earth ruled the oceans. Bigger guns meant more power, thicker armor meant survival, and nations believed that if you controlled the seas with massive battleships, you controlled the war. So countries poured enormous amounts of money, time, and resources into building floating giants, ships so large they looked unstoppable. But World War II exposed a dark truth. Those super warships weren't just outdated, they were some of the worst investments of the entire war, and the reasons why changed warfare forever. Before World War II, battleships were the ultimate symbol of power. Naval strategy was simple. Bigger ship, bigger guns, longer range, heavier armor. If two fleets met, the one with the larger, stronger battleships was expected to win. That belief came from earlier naval battles, where gun-to-gun combat decided everything. So countries followed the same logic. If battleships won wars before, they'll win the next one too. And on paper, it made sense. Some of these ships carried guns so large they could fire shells weighing more than a car from over 30 kilometers away. They were floating fortresses. But paper logic doesn't survive real war, because while nations were focused on making ships bigger, war itself was quietly changing, and battleships didn't change with it. Let's talk money, because this is where the mistake becomes obvious. A single super battleship cost as much as hundreds of aircraft or dozens of submarines. It took years to build, thousands of workers, huge amounts of steel, fuel, and manpower, and once built, the cost didn't stop. These ships needed massive crews, constant maintenance, huge fuel supplies, protected escort fleets. So when one battleship was lost, it wasn't just a ship gone. It was years of effort erased in minutes, and in a fast-moving war, that was devastating. World War II proved one thing very clearly. The sky now controlled the sea. Aircraft didn't need to match a battleship's armor or guns. They just needed to reach it. Planes could attack from beyond gun range, strike from above, where armor was weakest, hit quickly, and disappear. And suddenly, a ship designed for ship-to-ship combat was helpless against something it wasn't built to fight. Battleships were slow to turn. Their anti-air defenses were limited early in the war, and even one successful airstrike could cripple them. This changed everything. A ship that took years to build could be disabled by a handful of aircraft in minutes. And as if aircraft weren't enough, another invisible threat was waiting beneath the waves. Submarines didn't care how big a ship was. In fact, the bigger the ship, the easier it was to detect, the harder it was to maneuver. The larger the target, torpedoes didn't need to punch through thick armor everywhere. They only needed to hit the right spot. And when they did, massive ships flooded quickly. Suddenly, size wasn't protection. It was a liability. At this point, battleships were expensive, vulnerable, and increasingly hard to protect. But the final blow came when something else proved it could do the job better. Aircraft carriers changed naval warfare completely. Unlike battleships, they didn't need to see the enemy. Their aircraft could strike hundreds of kilometers away. They could attack land, sea, and air targets. One carrier could influence an entire region of the ocean. And while carriers weren't cheap, they were flexible. If technology improved, you didn't need a new ship, you just upgraded the aircraft. Battleships didn't have that luxury. Their massive guns were fixed, their design was locked in, and once outdated, they stayed outdated. So by the middle of the war, something strange happened. The most powerful ships ever built were still floating, but they were no longer leading the fight. Instead of dominating battles, many battleships were reassigned to shore bombardment defensive roles, escort duties, important tasks, yes, but far from what they were built for. They had become supporting tools, not strategic leaders. Ships meant to control oceans were now guarding others. That's when it became clear. The era of battleship dominance was over. The dark reason super battleships were bad investments wasn't that they were useless. It was that they were built for the past, not the future. World War II proved that. Speed beats size. Flexibility beats firepower. Technology evolves. Faster than steel battleships were engineering masterpieces. But war no longer needed what they offered. And that's the real lesson. Power doesn't belong to the biggest machine. It belongs to the one that adapts fastest.